Hi, I'm Greg. I'm the lead singer for Lipstick Generation.
And I'm Steve. I'm the bassist.
And welcome to the Lipstick panel.
We should have just had Victor just do my intro for me.
We should have.
Although his Greg was pretty good.
Right. I mean, it's really easy to mock me. Let's be fair.
Should we just start over and have Victor be Greg?
No, he can do a Greg impression later. Hey, speaking of things that are easy to mock, today on the Lipstick panel, we're talking about Limp Bizkit and their debut album, $3 Bill, y'all! And we have some...
Is that how the dollar sign's pronounced?
I don't know. And hey, we have some special guests with us today. We've got the great Julia Townsend joining the show for the first time. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you.
And
good to be here.
We also have Julia's boyfriend, Victor Krause, returning to the show. Welcome back, Victor.
Hey, I'm a mainstay.
Yes, thank you for allowing us not to cancel this episode this week.
It could have just been you and me talking about this great album, Greg.
It could have been. So,
I know how much you love 90s music, Greg.
Yeah, you know how much I love 90s music and rapping and music devoid of melody and music that is derogatory towards women. So really, this,
And white dudes doing funk
and
vaguely.
white people funk. So this, checks off all the boxes of things I love about music.
Yeah!
So here's the thing. The reason we're doing Limp Bizkit is because we have a friend of the show, Josh Toomey, who graciously allowed us to appear on his show to plug our new music video. We don't share a lot of the same tastes in music. We kind of have opposite tastes in music, and we don't really like the same things. And I was trying to, reach sort of a middle ground with him and grow and learn as a musician and maybe find a way to appreciate the stuff that he likes. And I liked a couple Limp Bizkit songs, so I thought, you know what, let's do a Limp Bizkit album. Maybe I will find more to appreciate in your genre of music. We planned this months in advance, and then he wasn't able to make it today. Everyone else who I asked to be on this episode were either laughing at me when they asked if I liked Limp Bizkit or insulted when I asked if they liked Limp Bizkit.
Or they were show mainstay Julia and her boyfriend Victor.
Right. Who will just be on any episode no matter what.
Yeah!
So enthusiastic about Limp Bizkit, let me tell you.
So, yeah, not even the guy who toured in a peer band of Limp Bizkit was able to be on this episode. No one wanted to do this. I don't know if any of us liked this album, but let's go around the panel and talk about our history with Limp Bizkit and this album in particular. You know what? Mainstay of the show, Julia. How about you go first?
Oh, I'm so happy to kick this off. I listened to the 3 or 4 Limp Bizkit songs that everybody knows in high school and lost interest entirely. So that's the brief summation of my Limp Bizkit knowledge.
And what were your general thoughts going into this album, and your thoughts going out of this album? Were you optimistic going in, or just thinking it was going to be terrible and then having your expectations met?
Listen, I always like to have a positive album-going experience, so I always try to go in, optimistic and hopeful and starry-eyed. I think I liked this album more than I thought I would, but I also, even with my positive mentality, wasn't expecting to like it a whole bunch. But, kind of surprised me.
Well, fair enough. Victor, you're an expert on Limp Bizkit. Tell us your history with the band and this album and what your thoughts were going in and your thoughts going out.
I know almost as much about Limp Bizkit as I know about Kiss, so
you're an expert.
Yeah, I mean, you've listened to hours and hours of podcasts about Kiss. You probably know something about them at this point.
That's true, yeah. I similarly knew I probably knew 3 or 4 songs, but I could only think of 2 earlier today.
Chocolate starfish!
And the hot dog flavored water!
And I was I was not thinking that this album was going to be very easy for me to sit through my customary at least 3 times I try to do for this show. And I gotta say, it at least occasionally sounded either like Korn or like Rage Against the Machine enough for me to be able to talk about it in a way that could make some sense to me and also not be a complete slog the whole time. So I will say it did exceed my expectations. But it's not great, guys.
So Steve, you love 90s music. You're in a 90s cover band. Tell me why you love Fred Durst so much.
So in 1999, 14-year-old me turned on the radio and heard, "I did it all for the nookie! Come on, the nookie!" I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world! And then I think at some point I also heard Faith, like on MTV, and was like, this is also the coolest thing in the world! That George Michael song is dumb! But, you know, Limp Bizkit made it awesome, and then I heard Break Stuff on the radio, and was like, yeah, this is also all very cool! And then, I bought the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack because it had that one great Metallica song and that one great Limp Bizkit song. Now I know why you want to hate me! And then I grew up. And I didn't listen to Limp Bizkit for, other than the fact that I've still got that one song that I owned on a soundtrack, just like rotating through my shuffle every once in a while. I'm like, oh, I still kind of like this song, but I never listened to anything else. And then this week I was like, okay, I just stopped listening to the band because it was sort of that embarrassment that, Greg's generation all stopped listening to 80s music in the 90s when everybody was like, oh no, that music was all bad and embarrassing. Let's listen to real cool music like Limp Bizkit. And then the early 2000s rolls down and everyone's like, oh no, that like late 90s rock rap thing is embarrassing and terrible. Let's listen to cool music like Fleet Foxes or whatever. And then I listened to it on Monday. I was like, oh no, this is bad. In fact, it turns out. And I was like, all right, I got to listen to it another time to like really get my rankings going. And then I listened to it again on Friday and I was like, oh no, parts of this are good, actually. This was inspiring to an entire generation or an entire genre and an entire generation of musicians. And like, I hear aspects of much better music that came later in the production of this album. I feel so conflicted. Also, these lyrics aged way worse than, like, 14-year-old me thought this was kind of cool, but, 34-year-old me is like, oh, wow, Fred Durst, stop hitting your girlfriend. That's not cool.
So, I like that you described my generation when I'm, like, 5 years younger than you?
4.5.
So yeah, 4.5 years younger than you, but I come from a preceding generation.
Yeah, but you're also the guy who's like, no man, that Cherry Pie band, they're legit. They have some really good stuff. Don't judge them by that one song.
They do, Uncle Tom's Cabin. You know it's a great song.
It's true, I do, but it's definitely your doing to justify that kind of thing.
That's fair. So, it's interesting. I was hoping to have that sort of reaction to Limp Bizkit, where a band I wrote off, I would find new layers to appreciate. The way that, you wrote off Warrant and Cherry Pie and thought, oh, it's just dumb hair metal.
Yep.
And then you discovered, oh, there's more depth and nuance to this band than I gave them credit for.
To be fair, I only really know the 2 songs.
But that's still more depth and nuance than you gave them credit for.
50% of Warrant songs are actually pretty good, it turns out.
Right. Hey, it's a high batting average. Remember how much Kiss you've listened to.
Hot takes.
Hot takes.
What a guy.
Gonna get another bad review because Greg criticizes Kiss sometimes on the show. That goes through every Kiss song.
Sorry.
Right. So, my experience with Limp Bizkit is I grew up in the 90s, and I thought all the music on the radio was terrible. Limp Bizkit included. So, the formative bands I remember growing up would be Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Limp Bizkit, Insane Clown Posse, Smashing Pumpkins.
One of these things is not like the other.
The Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Britney Spears.
Several of these things are not like the others.
I just assumed that. So if that was the bar for music, I'm like, okay, so music is just this bad, shitty thing I don't understand why people like. Then I discovered the Queen song, Princes of the Universe, and like, whoa, this is awesome! And then there was another anime music video on that same site that was to a Limp Bizkit song, the one from the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack. And like, this is acceptable.
Biddle-doo, biddle-doo. I mean, it's probably acceptable because they started off with a much better hook written by like a real composer.
Yeah, so it was a acceptable song. I'm like, yeah, this is fine. And so because Limp Bizkit had one song that I thought was fine, I decided to not completely write off the band. I heard that Wes Borland was a very good guitar player, but I'm not a nu metal guy. I think it's deciding, hey, you know how metal was like really like ugly sounding with its riffs, but at least there was like some semblance of vocal melody? What if we had dudes rap instead? It's like you took the shittiest parts of metal and the shittiest parts of rap and then made white guys do it to make it even worse. So it's just like all these like bad elements combined together. But I decided, you know what, I want to give this a chance, go in open-minded, and hope that I come out appreciating this band and understanding why this was an influential album. And yeah, I really did not care for this CD quite much at all. I actually got some PTSD from listening to this CD because it reminded me of my shitty, terrible childhood.
I remember the late 90s when domestic violence was a topic on the radio and in my house! Yay!
Right. So this sort of like unrepentant, douchey, like tinge of domestic violence with dudes wearing those like baggy Jenko jeans, that ugly ass album cover, reminds me of the dudes in my, white trash neighborhood who would fucking stab people on the street and wear their little hatchet necklaces and talk about how great Limp Bizkit and Insane Clown Posse are, and they wouldn't bathe, and this reminded me of my shit childhood in Cleveland, and like, man, the CD is kind of annoying me, and I know that my connection of this, like, triggering PTSD memories in me isn't every listener's experience, and I was hoping to find layers to it that would, like, push past the PTSD, like Smashing Pumpkins. Reminds me a little bit of, like, my bad childhood, but conveniently they actually have some really great songs. Nothing on the CD is good enough to push past the PTSD. I didn't like it. I'm sorry, Josh, I was trying to be positive about the CD. I didn't want to shit on it, but god damn, I don't like it. Yeah, so, as far as what this offered culturally, like at least hair metal, for all of its flaws, and I announced there's lots of flaws, hair metal was at least optimistic music most of the time. It was about overcoming adversity, seeking a better life,
getting murdered by the police,
and partying and getting laid. And I understand that, the misogyny in hair metal is problematic, but at least it wasn't. For the most part, there are exceptions, Manowar, for the most part, it wasn't violence against women. It was, a celebration of life. And this is just like angst without being clever and just makes me feel kind of gross. So yeah, that's my history of Limp Bizkit and this album. So you guys ready to get into this ranking?
No, I don't think I am, because I feel bad that I'm the one defending everything.
Oh yeah, you're the hero of this episode since Josh couldn't make it.
I'm the resident guy who likes Limp Bizkit.
I will say this, since I got that criticism out of the way, I am going to try to be as positive as I can going forward. Like, the original premise of this show was to try to be positive talking about music, but we're talking about the first Limp Bizkit album.
You're testing your limits.
I'm positive that this album is terrible.
All right, well, coming in as the worst song on this album. No,
oh, he went there.
I went there.
Oh.
Didn't even go least best.
Oh, no. All that negativity rubbed off on Greg.
I got some PTSD listed.
Yeah!
So yeah, the worst song on this album, according to the panel, is Clunk.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think, there's a broad consensus on this one. Except for Greg. So, Greg, how about you, shine some positivity into this? Why is this the fourth best song on the album?
Okay, so I've got notes. I wrote ugly bass tone, boring riff, and record scratches. Not a good start to the song. So, this is the song I ranked, fourth place?
Yeah.
But the Marilyn Manson-esque chorus is creepy, catchy, and cool aside from Fred's high-pitched rapping riffs throughout the chorus. The song gets better once you get into the flow of the song. The reason I ranked it so high is because at the end of the song, there's a snippet from a Tom Snyder interview, which honestly might be the highlight of the entire album because Tom Snyder is a really good interviewer. So, the Tom Snyder interview at the end, I'm like, hey, I know that guy. He's done some cool band interviews with, like, Kiss and the Plasmatics and Billy Corgan. Tom Snyder's a cool guy who will go there and have deep conversations. Much deeper than any of the conversations lyrically on this album. And honestly, there is a slight cleverness where it's like, yeah, we're aggressive, but it's like expressing our souls. You know, I just wish your souls were more worthwhile to express, Limp Bizkit. But, yeah, the Tom Snyder thing was cool, so that's why I ranked it 4th.
Wow.
As a wise man once said, get that wiki-whack shit out of our music. R.I.P. dude from Psycho Stick who faked his death to go platinum. And now I'm out of Psycho Stick references because I only have the first album.
Oh, that's too bad. I've got a bunch of them if you want to borrow them.
The whole comedy thing, just like...
The first album is their worst album.
Didn't stand up to repeated listens, so I never got around to like the rest of them.
Sandwich is their magnum opus. I think
their first album is the funniest.
I don't think so. I think Sandwich is a funnier album.
Interesting.
But as we're talking about a much better band, let's get back to Limp Bizkit.
I'm honestly, I was gonna bring up Psycho Stick on this episode. I'm glad it's already come up, but
it's such a good
quote. There's one song in particular where it just simply has to be mentioned.
Yeah, all the rest of us ranked this second from the bottom. It just felt like filler to me.
So my notes have never has a song title so accurately described my reaction to the song itself. And I think it's like, I think I was afraid that this entire album was going to be this, and I guess technically it's better than this. So
yeah, I mean, most of the album is just like a slightly more refined version of this.
Yeah,
keyword slightly.
Yeah, for me, on this album, there was we've had various barriers on albums before. For me, this album has the intro barrier, and this song does not clear the intro barrier.
Rough.
It didn't clear mine either. It's just bad. It just doesn't. I hate to be one of those people who's like, this song just sounds like noise, but that's really all it was to me.
I listen to a lot of music which is just noise, and it's all better than this.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got some really good harsh noise friends around here.
Yeah,
there's a lot better noise than this.
I will say, if this didn't have the Tom Snyder clip, I don't know where I would rank it, but probably the same place. But that Tom Snyder clip just elevated it so high, because oh, hey, someone who's talented on this record. Oh, that's, Wes Borland is a good guitar player.
Wes Borland is a national treasure.
He's a good guitar player, but playing terrible stuff on this album. Speaking of terrible songs, next up on the list we have Indigo Flow. So, wow. Steve, you're the Greg of this song.
Yeah,
care to justify this?
I ranked this one at number 1.
What?
So hear me out. There's no justification for this.
I have a question for you. I have a question for the entire panel before you get into this. Is there anything whiter than Fred Durst saying the word homie?
Vanilla Ice doing it?
I don't know. I sense more street cred from Vanilla Ice than I do from Fred Durst.
I feel like Vanilla Ice has more people who would beat you up if you questioned him saying homie, but Fred Durst himself would actually try to beat you up if you questioned him saying homie.
Right, but he would not succeed.
Yeah, but he'd try. He'd put forth the effort. He'd put himself out there. He would risk getting beat up by you to protect his credibility. Rather than Vanilla Ice, I feel like he'd be too worried about his hair.
No, he's... I respectfully disagree. The ninja rap is better than any song on this album.
I mean, yes, of course, but that's not what we're talking about.
Alright. So, justify the song, Steve.
So, in terms of like the actual production and arrangement, this is the most coherently put together song, I think. I don't know why I emphasized those particular syllables, but I feel like of all of the songs on the album, this is just like the most tight, well organized, like his, you know, as whack as it is, Fred Durst's flow on this song actually like has a real sense of rhythm to it and isn't just like him alternating back and forth between various kinds of barks and yells and squeals. Like, if you're talking about the elements of rap rock rather than nu metal that this was sort of the, you know, one of the forebears for, this is the most coherent example of rap and rock on the album. And there's nothing toxic about the lyrics. Like, he's not singing about
change of pace.
Right. I
Like,
like that
he's
that's the standard we're holding this to.
Right. He's like, you know what? Chino's a cool dude. There's a lot of neat people who are hanging around in this recording studio. And while I just do not like I'm going to list all my friends and why I like them. I'm looking at you, Big D and the Kids Table songs. Like, just, it's palatable here, I suppose.
High praise.
High praise.
So the first time I listened to it, I was like, oh, this is a really nice, like, change of pace for this album. And it's kind of, you know, like a more low-key groove. And if this is, in fact, Fred rapping, why does he ever do the annoying high-pitched thing that he seems to constantly do instead of having, like, kind of a normal, acceptable, or maybe not even acceptable, but, like, kind of palatable voice that he has in this one? And then
The palatable starfish!
Yeah. So I was initially kind of high on it, and then
You're initially
Julia
kind of
told me
summer
to listen-
turns to high on it.
It's no fair
Yeah.
listening to
Oh
this
my
album
God.
while high.
Yeah. And then Julia told me to listen to the lyrics, and then it fell quite a ways.
Michael Jordan
I
and
wish there was
champagne,
some-
bro.
Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, I guess now I appreciate the fact that they are more positive than basically most of the other lyrics on this album.
Right?
But they're still really, really stupid. Like, irredeemably stupid. It sounds like a child wrote this.
A child with pretty impressive 90s music
Yeah.
connections, though.
It's true.
A 5-year-old that knows corn. So jealous.
So the thing that impresses me about this album is this an album that makes Kiss look like really good lyricists by comparison? I didn't know that was possible. But, like, Kiss lyrics are like Bob Dylan compared to this album, and I can't fathom that. It hurts my brain. And there's a level of me that respects how dumb it is, because I didn't know humans could sink to such depths without, like, illiteracy being a thing. But I feel like an illiterate person still probably has more nuance and passion within their soul than Fred Durst is. I was trying to be positive.
Look, there's a lot of nuance to a lyric that admits that you got out-partied by Sugar Ray. Can you picture that? Like, nowadays, going back and be like, yeah, I was hanging out with Sugar Ray, and those guys party hard at the county fair.
So the word that keeps coming up in my notes is the word embarrassing.
Yeah.
Welcome to the 90s!
But you know what? They all have a platinum album. None of us have platinum albums, but you know what? If my choice is to have a platinum album with this and remain in obscurity, I would rather remain in obscurity than have this be my legacy. Like, Janie felt bad about Cherry Pie being his legacy. At least that was catchy. Damn.
Harsh.
All right, so any other comments on this piece of shit before we move on?
It just fucking sucks, is all.
Does it? It doesn't clear your intro barrier.
Not at all. No, this was my very bottom.
Okay, mine. I was kind of. It
Loathe
was
it.
kind of a toss up for me, and technically it clears it for me.
Awful. I really want to fight Fred Durst for this one.
You know,
So
at least
bad.
this one's it's just embarrassing, but it's not mean-spirited. So it's just like, hey, I'm gonna talk about my friends. Like, I'll give him credit for that. Like, as a guy who loves shonen anime, appreciating your friends is cool. I just wish he could do it in a way that's just, like, less triggering my PTSD of, like, white dudes wearing Janko jeans back in the hood.
Look, you need comfortable pants to do whatever it is they're doing.
To sit in front of the supermarket drinking Faygo, smoking cigarettes.
Well, you need the comfortable pants to, like, shoplift the Faygo and cigarettes.
Yeah. Super, super happy with, like, this is the music of my generation.
Yeah!
So, here's a great song title. Stinkfinger.
Oh my god.
What, none of you guys like Tool?
I mean, I don't, actually.
I do happen to like Tool, so...
So how much did you bump this one up? Because you're like, this is clearly, like, very inspired by a Tool song.
I will say that's probably why it is so high on my list, because I was like, God, if you just took Fred Durst out of this, it's not horrible.
I mean, that should be the name of this album.
Yeah, really, really. You know, that whole, like, Garfield minus Garfield? I need Limp Bizkit minus Fred.
Oh, yeah, this was the one where I have my best notes. Yeah, I put this one, like, in the upper mids, like, 5th from the top. And my summary is like, look, clearly, like, you listen to the melody back-to-back with Stinkfist, and you're like, okay, yes, Fred Durst was listening to a lot of that Tool album that came out the year before this one. Even Wikipedia mentions that in one of the other songs, that he borrowed a Tool vocal effect. But now I'm just envisioning, like, there's a much better alternate universe where, like, Limp Bizkit just fizzled out, but Wes Borland joined Tool instead.
Ooh.
And then, like, we probably elected Yang in 2016 for president, and Chinese Democracy got released in 1998 instead of $3 Bill Y'all, and then POD broke up after Fundamental Elements of Southtown. Just think of that, how good that world would be. And now I'm bummed out listening to Stinkfinger.
So this got my last place. This got last place for me on title alone.
I mean, it's hard for me to fight against that. Once again, a song title that makes Kiss lyrics look classy still confuses me. It confuses me from a band that isn't parody. Like, if this was a parody band, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because that's a really dumb title.
It is a parody of Stinkfist.
I mean, I don't think it's an intentional parody. I think they just did a bad job copying it.
All right, that's fair.
It's like a parody with no humor. Because it's just gross. It's not funny. The lyrics aren't like...
So, Scary Movie 5.
Yeah, well, it's not even, like, self-aware, it feels like. It feels like this was done by accident, but on purpose.
Yeah, I think there is a lack of... almost a charming lack of self-awareness on this album.
Unexamined Laugh is the best, yo!
Wes Borland being in this band really confuses me.
Right? I feel it's just like a really talented, like, theatrical guitarist and just like a weird misogynist screaming into a microphone, and then a rhythm section.
A unremarkable rhythm section leaning towards bad. So yeah, my notes on this...
and a DJ. He's part of the rhythm section. Nobody cares.
My notes on this song, good chorus riff. One of the more consistent songs on the album, but nothing about this one stands out. It's the most fillery of all the songs, but it's also called Stinkfinger, so...
Doing it no favors. I mean, it would be different if they were like the new metal version of Spinal Tap.
Right.
And put out a song like this.
Right. But they're not.
It would be
they are the new metal version of Spinal Tap, but not on purpose. And it's also like... It's just, like, it's not so bad it's good. It's just so bad it's bad.
My favorite genre.
I mean, to be fair, this was early enough in the new metal genre that, like, they're like the new metal version of Kiss in that, like, they don't get the irony of what they're doing, and they were heavily influential to a lot of better musicians.
Steve, I love you. I think that is an insult to Kiss.
I mean,
And you
is
know,
it the worst thing I've said about Kiss?
yes.
Oh, dang.
Like, look, I'm willing to offer criticism of Kiss quite often on this show. Not even I, in my most cynical of hearts, can in good faith compare them to Limp Bizkit. So speaking of unremarkable songs, next up on the list we have Leech.
Oh.
We both kind of liked this one. I don't remember what about it, but...
Oh, this was the demo.
I think it maybe because it sounded kind of like the first couple of tracks that I also kind of liked, and that it's short.
It is short.
The shortness helps it.
Yeah.
That actually is in my notes. So my notes on this song: this album as a whole seems very angry and blaming others for problems without any introspection whatsoever as to what fault may lie with oneself, which I find to be dim-witted and problematic as a whole. This song continues that trend, but at least it's short.
I think this one, if this was the standard for like sort of album track on this album would be a lot better. But as it stands, it's like
A highlight.
yeah.
I had it as like a medium light. It's in the middle for me, is what I'm trying to say.
I had it mid-low. It just felt like filler to me. Like, it's not the most standout track in any way. But yeah, so Victor, you want the entire album of filler.
It's not filler, but it does come after like Indigo Flow.
It really feels like all but maybe 2 of the songs on this album are filler, which isn't a great sign.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't have anything more to say about this one.
I can't really
All right,
remember
I'm
what
done
it sounds
talking
like
about
right
this
now.
crappy song.
What does it sound like? I mean, it sounds like a very straightforward Limp Bizkit song. Like, it doesn't have, I don't think it really had anything in particular that stuck out about it. Like, if you compare it to, the other ones that we've talked about, that like Indigo Flow had like a smooth rap vibe to it. Clunk had a lot of jagged noise. Stinkfinger had a riff vaguely ripped off from Tool. Clunk also had way too much wiki-whack shit.
Clunk also used the word clunk, which is a fucking war crime. It's like the worst word to use in lyrics that I can think of.
Apparently that song is about some specific alcoholic that Fred Durst doesn't like. So
God.
There's the part of me that is pretty sure that Clunk is some awful portmanteau for like, crazy, lazy drunk or something.
So comparing Limp Bizkit to Kiss, there's a Kiss song called Parasite that is much better than Leech. Any other comments before we move on? Alright. Next up on the list, we have Intro, creatively titled.
Wow, the intro barrier on this list is very high. I like it.
According to Genius, the intro is sometimes called $3 Bill, y'all. So it could be the title track.
Oh.
So there's that.
Okay.
Honestly,
If they had called it that, it honestly would have been higher on my list.
Interesting.
So, this is... It's kind of a cool theatrical opening. Like, what if Alice Cooper was a white trash rapper instead of a good musician?
Yeah.
Which was like, okay, I hope I'm getting into something that has, like, some layer of nuance and depth. I admit it, I have a lot of bias against, like, white trash. Like, I'm probably mildly racist against that, because that's, like, what I grew up around, and I just hated everyone around me. So, like, this reminds me of those people growing up. And, but I'm like, well, maybe there's, like a beauty and poetry to these white trash rappers that I missed. In the same way that, like, Lynyrd Skynyrd, when you actually dig beneath the surface of the couple hit songs, there's actually some really beautiful poetry in those songs.
Some real deep thoughts about maybe the Confederacy should have won. Am I wrong, Greg?
I mean, it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
Like, what?
I mean, that's REM.
Yeah, what noisy cats are we?
But what I'm saying is, the thing is, Skynyrd was a band I wrote off as just like white trash garbage, dug beneath the surface and found still some problems, but a lot of stuff that was really worthwhile. So I thought maybe it'll be like the same with Limp Bizkit, where maybe Fred Durst is secretly a poet and I just didn't know it. So this track gave me some hope and optimism, because I like those big theatrical Alice Cooper intros. It wasn't a very good intro, and it seemed like much dumber than an Alice Cooper album intro. But I'm like, well, maybe this will go somewhere. So it made me cautiously optimistic, and it was thankfully short, so I ranked it pretty high.
Honestly, I think all this intro would really need is just somebody else besides Durst doing it. Because,
yeah, probably.
It's very obvious that it's his voice. He's introducing his own thing. I think it would work much better if he'd gotten somebody who was better able to sell the televangelist vibe that he's going for.
Or just pitch shift it? Or try to speak in a different tone of voice?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like his voice is distinct enough that every tone of voice that he uses sounds kind of the same. Once you've listened to a bit of Limp Bizkit, you can always pick out when it's Fred Durst doing it. But I don't know, maybe have one of the other members of the band do it, or I don't know, just hire a public speaker. This was a major label album, wasn't it? They had the budget. This was
to hire a guy for 50 seconds, I'm sure.
Yeah, this was on Interscope. This was on Interscope in the 90s. They still had money that they could have, just hired some dude to come in and do that part.
So, question, does this actually offer anything thematic for the album?
According to Genius, it's probably inspired by the Tool song Disgustipated. So, yes, the theme of the album is that Limp Bizkit wants to be Tool.
So they
with
want to
rap and a turntable.
So, take a band that already wasn't that great and make them less great.
I take issue with this. I mean, hey, maybe they could have just gotten Maynard James Keenan to do the speaking in the intro.
Yeah, actually, that would have been...
Since they're so horny for him.
Yeah, that would have been great.
It would have been great. It would have been better than this.
Then it would have been the best song ever.
It really does just kind of
apparently
solidify my stance that, I would rather just go listen to Tool.
Right?
Why can't we just listen to Tool instead?
Just like Wes Borland, a second guitarist in Tool.
Just release Wes Borland and let me listen to Tool instead.
So, do we have any other comments on intro? The intro barrier?
My notes only outline the rules for the intro barrier. Anything below this simply sucks hard.
Well, fair enough. Well, hey, speaking of songs that
I'm done
suck
talking
hard,
about this crappy song.
next up on the list we have Stuck.
I like that you say that it sucked hard, but you put it, pretty well in the middle. Everybody but Julia
that's the bar for the album, Steve.
The low mids.
I did put it kind of high. It's another one where I was like, sounds like everything else, but if you just take out that Durst man, it's a little better.
I have this one probably 2-3 spaces higher than it deserves, just for the Suicidal Tendencies reference.
Yeah, I liked thinking about how I like Suicidal Tendencies and how. Actually, I kind of hated that lyric though. I was like, "Fuck off."
So, I have notes on all these songs because there aren't really strong melodies or strong hooks, and this isn't a very good album. And so in order to remember what the songs are even vaguely sounding like, I needed notes. So my notes on this one say, dissonant verses, heavy and angry chorus. Nice to see misogyny didn't die with hair metal, I guess. Crescendo ground is something that Fred Durst seems to be a fan of. The jazzy, in quotes, breakdown is close to how I feel about white people funk. I'm really not into this song lyrically. The aggression of the music makes the misogyny come off as much close to real-life violence than the fun party misogyny of 80s rock. 80s rock is problematic, but this is definitely more problematic. Also, the, in quotation marks, hip ending is embarrassing.
Can we examine the phrase party misogyny, Greg?
Can we what?
Can we examine the phrase party misogyny a little bit?
Like, it's misogyny, but at least they're trying to be fun about it. Like, it's still bad. It's still problematic, but it's better than just misogyny and I'm just going to be just openly violent.
I did find myself a little bit surprised that, after this album, Fred Durst still managed to convince 2 separate women to marry him.
Well,
and that was when he was already married to somebody, or I think he was married already when this album came out for the first time.
Well, if you look at the music videos for this album, the women are always the ones who are at fault, and Fred Durst is just a victim.
Oh, yes, it's definitely true.
They're yelling at him, and he's just, like, trying to reason with them, and they're the ones hitting him. Fred Durst is the victim.
Look, if they just hadn't burned the roast, there wouldn't be a problem.
Oh, God.
So...
Yeah, he's gross.
Yep.
I also had to write notes for a lot of these songs because I couldn't remember them. But in my notes, I say that the atmospheric stuff during the instrument or during the like verses and stuff reminded me of like, I guess, Korn. So maybe I liked that. I don't recall anymore.
So I'm glad you brought up a much better band, which is not hard to do on this episode. So, despite me having a lot of critiques with nu metal as a genre in terms of like songwriting composition, Korn is a band I respect very much because I think they do actually offer some strong hooks, and I think there is a lot of sincerity to the lyrical content, where the anger and aggression comes off as authentic and true and therapeutic in many ways. And so while it might not necessarily be my preference to listen to all the time, I do listen to some Korn songs in rotation and think they're quite excellent. I have a lot more respect for what Korn is doing, which has a lot of similarities to Limp Bizkit, but they're just doing it so much better in every possible way.
Yeah, and it helps that Jonathan Davis has like an actually interesting voice.
Yeah.
Instead of just an annoying one.
I actually think, so here's the thing, I would like to think that maybe Fred Durst has had a come to Jesus moment, and maybe became a better person over the years. But I actually do think that Fred Durst's voice, when utilized properly, is the major sonic appeal of Limp Bizkit. Which I will get to on later songs where his voice is actually appealing. But I just want to toss that out there as a little seed to fester in your minds.
Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I can see that, but it feels like in a lot of songs, such as this one, it is extremely the weak point.
Oh, absolutely. I'm saying he is both the worst part of this band and the best part, because Wes, let's be honest, isn't playing like that good of guitar parts on this album.
I guess
I agree.
The trick is that Durst is the most distinct part of this band, and he is a very distinct vocalist. That, it sticks out a lot, and sometimes it sticks out well. Like, he can make a lot of interesting sounds with his voice, and that's all he does all the time. And so there are times like, well, this is really annoying that he just keeps doing these things. And there are times it's like, okay, well, that's kind of cool, and that's a good effect that could be very valuable in music if it isn't completely overused.
Well, I think it's a matter of where you find him. If it's within a good song and within the right context, his stuff actually works very well. Where I'll give spoilers for later songs in the album because whatever, we're here. But I think sort of his main appeal as a vocalist is, especially with a lot of rappers, like they kind of sort of like keep the same monotone tone in their voice, but his appeal is how he will fluctuate in pitch, and when he harmonizes with himself with like, a higher pitched Durst and a lower pitched Durst, like playing with each other in the songs, that actually is sort of a distinct, unique sound that is the signature part of the Limp Bizkit sound, and that actually is an appealing sound, even for me. With all my negativity and freaking PTSD from this, I can admit that is a very appealing sound, which unfortunately isn't found much on this album. So, this is the first album. You do learn and grow as an artist, and you're like, oh, that's the best part of our sound, we should do that more. And that is what that Mission Impossible 2 song is basically, like, all that. And, like they figured out, like, that's the hook of the band. They didn't quite figure it out in this whole album. And they weren't good enough songwriters otherwise to, like, compensate for not having their major musical hooks in. So, there are, albums, early albums by artists where, like, Kiss didn't quite have their sonics set on their first album. But they had really great...
Woods would be easier.
Right. But they had great songs, and those songs are still in their set list to this day, and they're songs that work much better live. And, like Black Diamond is on the first Kiss album, which is, I think, safe to say better than anything on this. And the production is bad, but there still at least was the kernel of good songwriting. That's not present throughout most of this album, and I think that's the problem.
That's fair enough. I think I do like his when he does like sort of the aggressive yell thing during most of the choruses. I think his actually sounds quite good, and I think his actual like more low key rap voice I'm mostly into. I think it's more. I think mainly the thing that annoys me is when his attitude comes through in the writing and through how he says it.
Makes me feel like I'm about to get pushed down a flight of stairs.
I mean, yes.
Oh, man. On behalf of all men, I'm sorry for Fred Durst. Like, I am so sorry. And while I'm here, sorry for Gene Simmons.
This is great. This is a great day for feminism.
Hashtag feminism.
So yeah, any other comments on Stuck before we move on?
Who's the
I
female
already
Fred
forgot this.
Durst?
Yeah.
Courtney Love?
Yeah.
Like, embarrassing alt-rock figure from, like, the 90s that just makes you feel gross.
Yeah. See, the trick is, like...
Except she's actually...
Yeah, Courtney Love, like, has some... she does a good job of surrounding...
She's really good at getting Billy Corgan to write songs for her.
She's good at surrounding herself with, like, people who can fill in for the gaps for her. And, like, she actually has something meaningful to say. Like, that's the big thing with this, is, like, this is suburban white boy rap, where, like, his biggest complaint is that, like, he had a relationship that went poorly, or he thinks televangelists are a bad thing.
Which, to be fair, like, those are both bad things.
But, yeah, they don't merit this level of aggression compared to, say, Jonathan Davis, who's like, hey, my dad used to hit me, so I got a really angry song about that. Or Courtney Love, who's like, hey, it sucks being a woman in music, so I got a song about how, like, my body has been commoditized my entire career.
So I'm going to give you another band that had an album in the 90s that talked about televangelism being bad and breakups.
Is it Extreme?
No, actually, well, maybe. Actually, I'll give you two. I'll give you two bands that had albums in the 90s that talked about televangelism being bad and breakups. Genesis. But
Genesis isn't super aggro about it. You're like, oh yeah, Phil Collins, you got deep thoughts, cool.
Right, and Warrant. But also they, explored a number of lyrical themes, like on that same album, what life would be like after a nuclear holocaust, the psyche that Mark David Chapman had when he killed John Lennon, and what pushes a person to that limit. And also they had hooks. So...
Yeah.
Like
this is just white boy rage.
Yep.
Yeah, white boy
You
rage.
punch a hole in a wall. Problem solved.
Also, there's a song on that Warren album called "Hole in the Wall."
My frosty melted already. I hate Florida. Ka-chunk. And drywall.
Yeah. So, not a fan of this song. Also, any other comments before we move on?
No, I jack off really loud. I'm glad we got a clean take of that.
And in fairness, that's what "Hole in My Wall" by Warrant is about.
Oh, that kind of hole.
Look, there's a variety of lyrical themes on that album. Some songs are about nuclear holocaust. Some songs are about jacking off.
Some songs are about party misogyny.
Right.
Greg, we need to use party misogyny as a snake vomit song.
Okay, Mitch, add it to the thread. Add it to the thread while I intro this next great song. Next up on the...
"'Tis a mighty bottle of puke."
Next up on the list, we have Sour, one of the singles.
Ooh.
Oh.
Ooh.
The other not party misogyny song.
And so the video for this is hilarious, if you guys have seen it.
No, strange as it may sound, we didn't think to watch the music videos.
Yeah, you're not... I mean, they're amazingly bad. This is one where the video, I'll give you the plot of the video. There's a girl yelling at Fred Durst, and then after he gets berated by her yelling at him, she finally yells at her to shut up. And then the video is the girl just being, like, really mean to Fred Durst, but he just, like, kind of has a slight smirk, and then she leaves their dirty white trash apartment. But then, like, the sprinklers go off, and she gets, like, splashed by the sprinklers, and he and the gardener just kind of laugh, and then him and the gardener go and hang out and have a beer, I guess. So yeah, that's the video.
So wait, he's dating the gardener now?
Yeah.
I would
do fuck at the end. Right?
Yeah, I would.
Well, this was MTV in the 90s, so they have to be like a little bit subtle about it, but like you see two of them sharing a cigarette later on, which is, old.
Yeah, there's a pan over to a fireplace at a certain point.
That's right.
Man, if only we had like a drop about like a relationship that, started heterosexual and went homosexual due to another person stepping in.
We're here to take your pornography
Nope,
and
not that one.
sodomize our vast imagination. Pornography and sodomize our vast imagination.
Long, long
This is a very long drop that uses probably a copyrighted song, but it's from an advertisement. Like, if you're in Japan, get yourself some Sakura gummies.
Also, it's a quite quiet drop, too.
It's true.
My notes in the song is, the main riff of the song is good and actually has a Richie Kotzen vibe to it. That lasts for about 10 seconds before the dynamic shift, and then it just becomes kind of bad and droning, with a really droning chorus. And it mentions the title of the album, so that's cool, I guess.
Sure.
So it just reminds me of a much better artist I could be listening to, which, Richie Kotzen, by the way, all-around phenomenal musician and makes the rest of us look bad in every conceivable way. Great singer, great guitar player, like, just great at every instrument, and writes, like, this weird, like, jazz, fusion, rock metal that's really catchy. So, fuck you, Richie Kotzen, for being so good, and, for also us not doing a Richie Kotzen album instead.
Oh.
So this is my number 2, mainly for that riff, because I liked it so much.
Yeah.
I'm famously lyrics deaf, so I don't know what this is about. I imagine it's something wholesome and great, and
I thought I knew you, took time to throw my love into you.
okay.
Oh.
Screw
pretty-
you, because now you got me sitting in the sewer.
Oh my god!
This is the one I told you about, because he wrote it when he was having girlfriend troubles.
Right, yeah.
This is making Gene Simmons look good. Like, I said Kiss as a whole, but I'm getting specific. What?
Also, along your lines of the Richie Kotzen comparison, this song has the same drum beat as Time After Time by REM. So I have to like it for that reason a little bit as well. And I tried singing along with it one time when we were listening to it, and it kind of worked.
Yeah, it's another one of those where I don't think sound-wise it's bad, but then the rest of it just really did make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, can only go so far with that.
I think I've got this third from the bottom because gross lyrics. You know, sonically I've got it equivalent to a couple other ones in that it seems a little bit underwritten and underproduced. And then of those ones, it's bumped to the bottom because of, you know, awful lyrics.
Yeah, there's a part of me that's upset that we don't have Josh on here as an expert on nu metal, but I'm glad we have a woman on this episode who's not an expert on shitty dudes. Which I think was much more important.
Julia, you should be the female Fred Durst. Just write some awful toxic songs about guys.
I would fucking love to. Work that shit. No, really though, this song, I can feel what it feels like when Fred Durst is yelling at me, and I don't like it.
Like, we're laughing, but also I feel, like, genuinely sorry for what we have put women through, which is, like, allowing Fred Durst to go multi-platinum. Sorry.
Wait, got an apology.
I think it was worth it for break stuff.
Fair enough.
Break stuff just justifies everything that Durst ever did.
Like, as long as he's not breaking me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
As long as his anger is directed at someone else.
Yeah, as long as I'm not stuffed.
Just so long as he's skinning someone else's ass raw with that chainsaw.
So, Steve, you're the one who's supposed to be defending this album, and you still can't defend it.
To be fair, I barely ever do that with any of the albums that we do.
You defended Gojira pretty well.
It's true.
I think
I was really hoping that Josh was going to be on this episode so I could see what it would be like to be on the other end of sort of the reveal treatment.
Hey man, I was pretty positive on reveal. I was kind of on your side. I was like, look, this isn't amazing, but it's fine. Speaking of songs that are fine, I guess. Next on the list is a song I gave 11 points to, so one of my higher ranked songs. We've got Nobody Loves Me, next on the list.
Oh. I see.
I think I would like this more if they were sort of doing the Spinal Tap of nu metal thing.
I think the same thing. It's another one where it's like, it's trying to have a personality or a sense of humor, but it just doesn't commit to it, so it's not funny.
Hey, Julia, guess which band they ripped off at some point in this song?
Oh, don't tell me.
Yep, they got another Tool homage in here. With that,
I will say, I can hear it.
Yeah, he does the vocal effect from, oh shoot, I forget which song it is. Yeah, something off on Nima.
We're here. While
I wish we were listening to Anima.
Right?
I mean, I don't.
Well,
But-
you're wrong.
I mean, I'm open to doing it, but I'm...
Like, look, all of Tool are good at their instruments.
Yeah, look, Tool is... Like, what if Limp Bizkit was a better band in every way imaginable, actually sang, but still their songs weren't great? Like, everything about them, just like great musicians, talented artists, good lyricists. Like, everything about them is good except, like, hooks.
I prefer to think of Tool as, what if Gojira were on Downers?
God, yes.
That's fair.
I put this one high mids. It's a little bit middle of the road, but it's got Durst exploring some of the more interesting things that he does. Like, the Tool ripoff gimmick is, you know, goofy, but it's, you know, it's kind of a cool effect to use every once in a while. He does his clean vox with a lot of verb, which is an effect he does a lot more of later in his career, which I think is a good contrast. Like the difference between the yeah and the, you know, singing with a bunch of verb on it. Those contrast well.
Yeah, my notes on this song say, this statement seems to be true, given my difficulty finding guests for this episode.
No. Dang.
So yeah, nobody loves Fred Durst. A couple people love me. But that said, the chorus hook is one of the better ones on the album. It's actually kind of a catchy chorus. I remember what the chorus sounds like. And the shift between screaming and growls actually makes the chorus kind of catchy, but the breakdown is embarrassing, because I have to use the word embarrassing to describe almost every song in this album. Alright, any other comments on Nobody Loves Me?
I am Harry fucking Potter.
Alright. Next up on the list, we have Pollution.
Oh, kind of low.
I ranked it pretty low, mostly for the production. I feel like this song, if it were better produced, would be a lot better, but their performances are a little bit sloppy. The ad-libs, etc. in Durst's second vocal are just disorganized and kind of pointless, and he could have done a couple more takes of those. And like the mix, I recognize that the mix is pretty similar to what happens throughout the rest of the album, but it's a little bit like sloppier, and the way they do panning throughout this, like with two Dursts, one in each ear, is just suboptimal. And I think it stands out a lot more in this song than in most of the rest of the one. So this is one that if they'd just done a better job of recording and mixing the song, it would probably be towards the top for me. But as it is, it's pretty close to the bottom.
And I ranked it in the exact same spot. My notes say standard nu metal song, lots of screaming, break down the middle, bring that beat back. The screaming at the end makes me laugh. It reminds me of band arguments, which I suppose is the point. God, imagine being in a band with Fred Durst.
Yeah.
Like, as bad
Imagine being in a band with two Fred Dursts, where they're yelling at each other to shut up. So, full disclosure, the first album I ever recorded back in high school with Llama Mall, we have a song that does that thing, where like I had one of my friends come in and just did like, I re-recorded one of the songs on mandolin as like an awful quiet acoustic version, and then he just shouted Fred Durst isms, 2 takes of those back and forth at himself over top of it. It's pretty great, actually.
I'm sure it is, buddy.
I think you have a copy of that CD, Greg.
Do I have Llama Mall?
I don't know.
I don't think I have Llama Mall.
Well, I should burn you one.
I mean, yeah, probably, but, look, I'm sorry that our high school bands were really embarrassing and bad.
I'm not embarrassed by
At least
Llama
they
Mall
didn't
anymore.
go multi-platinum.
Right. But,
Man, I would have worn out our CD burner trying to do, 100,000 copies of that.
I have a question for you, Steve. Were you aware that your high school band was bad? Because I was very much aware, and that's why, I didn't try that hard. That's why the band was called the greatest motherfucking band in the world. And, I just wrote a bunch of joke songs because I'm just like, no, these are terrible musicians. I'm not going to try.
I mean, it depends on which of my high school bands you're talking about. If you're talking about Capacity 54, I realized that we kind of sucked after our first performance, and our guitarist went to college and came back, and we couldn't work together anymore. If we're talking about Llama Mall, it wasn't really a band so much as me recording in the basement, and I didn't realize it sucked until, sophomore, junior year of college. And if you're talking about the Christian band that I was trying to start, it didn't suck because it didn't exist. I had a drummer, but he lived 20 miles away, and neither of us had a car.
Hey, man, you can't make Christian music that sucks as long as your heart is in it.
I could probably rant that, you know what, I'm looking at like the Christian musicians that literally pay my salary and be like, I've never even heard their music, and I'm pretty sure their heart is in it, but it still sucks.
Yeah, like, are there Christian bands that even Christians are like, I don't know about this?
Oh, there's a lot of back and forth about it, depending on who you talk to. One of the major driving forces in Christian music these days is the various praise bands working at Hillsong, an Australian megachurch, and there is a lot of debate about them.
I know all of their song.
Yeah, With or Without You by U2, the Hillsong songs. But a big thing with them is that is very much a prosperity gospel church, and so there's a lot of churches that are really upset about, like, wait, why are we doing all these songs by these people who, like, their core belief is that if you believe in God hard enough, you're going to be sure to be healthy and wealthy. And then on the other side of things, you got a lot of Christian artists who are, fairly liberal because, they hang out with musicians all the time, and some of them are examining their lives because that's an important part of creating art, is to really think about things. And so a lot of them are pretty pro-gay rights, and that is upsetting to a lot of Christians as well. Like, there's always tons of shenanigans.
By the way, Striper episode coming soon on the Lipstick panel.
Striper are lucky because they predate the era. So this was the 90s. This was the era of Campus Life magazine, where you'd flip to the back and there would be a section of, like, music alternatives. And it would be like, are your kids listening to Limp Bizkit? Maybe you should suggest that they listen to Pillar or POD instead. It sounds just
1,000 Foot Crutch.
1,000 Foot Crutch.
Because their second album sounds like Limp Bizkit, but lighter.
Yeah.
Also, we looked it up, and 1,000 Foot Crutch started before Limp Bizkit.
Oh, dang.
So it's possible that they were drawing influence from yet another band.
From yet another better band.
Wait, was their second album before $3 Bill, y'all?
Let me check.
We know they started before. Yeah,
let me see.
One of them came out in 95.
So do we have any comments on Pollution from the two of you while we're looking this up?
The ending reminded me of, like,
2003
Psycho Stick albums, but Psycho Stick is a lot better than this. I think this song at least has a lot of, like, young fuckhead energy, which I can appreciate. But it's not like, I put it at number 3, but I'm not really going to defend it that hard. It's at least better than I was expecting. Like, I was expecting this album to be Clunk all the way through, and it at least had Pollution.
I had more fun listening to Pollution than most of the other songs.
Yeah. Did we get a year?
The year, okay, because I was thinking Set It Off specifically, which came out in 2004.
Okay,
so
that's way after.
It turns out 1,000 Foot Crutch was copying Limp Bizkit.
They did the oh shoot, why am I spacing on their name all of a sudden? Alien Youth, Invincible. Skillet. They did the Skillet thing.
Oh, Skillet.
Where they started off as, like, their own interesting independent thing, and they're like, hold on though, let's chase trends. I'm very disappointed in Skillet. Invincible was a great album, and then they're doing whatever it is they're doing now.
I had a friend in high school who told me that all Christian music sucked, and then I grabbed his iPod and looked through it, and he had Skillet, and then he told me Skillet was good.
I thought all Christian music sucked because I saw that South Park episode, and and then I listened to Striper, I'm like, actually, this is pretty sick.
Right. I thought all music sucked, and then I discovered the Newsboys. Project 86, nice.
Please don't talk to me about the Newsboys. That gives me PTSD.
Well, hey, since we've been talking about Christianity, it's appropriate that the next song on the list is Faith.
Faith.
Oh.
You have to have this.
I knew this day would come.
Flatfoot 55 was also in the queue of alternative names I was going to give to our guests band.
Yes.
Because I forget what his actual band was called. So I'm just picking up, Eiffel 55, Flatfoot 55. Primer 55.
They're called Imagine Dragons Secret Show.
Some 55.
So I ranked this as number 1 on the album because
Oh my
Those
God.
who listen to this show know that I rank based upon songwriting and not necessarily upon execution. Faith is by far the best written song on this album.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Yes, ironic covers are dumb. Sorry, Steve. I know you do lots of ironic covers.
I love ironic covers. I also love short ironic covers.
Here's the thing. With a cover song, I feel like you have such limited real estate on albums. If you were doing the Regdar thing where you're releasing a song like every month, then if you want to do like ironic covers, that's a little bit different because you're releasing so much content. But I feel like when you're a major label artist and you get the chance to cover a song, you should cover a song you love and not just be like, this is a dumb pop song, but we're gonna rock it up. Like, when Faster Pussycat covered You're So Vain, like, they rocked it up, but there was, like, authenticity because they believed in the lyrical message, and, like, there was, like, swagger and passion from it. I think ironic covers are just dumb because, like, all you're doing is annoying fans of the original, and you're not that smart.
There's not a lot of overlap between George Michael fans and Limp Bizkit fans, let's be honest.
Right, but, like, it's not that clever. Like, Ghost doing a slow, minor key cover of Here Comes the Sun isn't clever. Being like, oh man, we're gonna rock this cover of Faith up, isn't George Michael dumb? You're not clever. This is just like, I rank this number 1 as a song, but on the album, I don't know where I rank it, but it's so dumb. It is so dumb.
So one of my side comments on this is like, so this was the first single they released on a major label. The fact that the band survived that is very lucky of them. Like, specifically, I say Alien Ant Farm as another example of this a couple years later where they came along and their huge breakout single was the Michael Jackson cover, and their career couldn't recover from that. Like, everyone's like, yeah, but Michael Jackson wrote a better song than you ever will. And then, so the fact that Limp Bizkit's career continued to flourish after that was pretty lucky for them. But Alien Ant Farm also had the difference that their cover wasn't ironic.
Right, it was a good cover.
It was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. They were like, aha, look at this. But, like, no, legitimately, we watched a ton of Michael Jackson music videos while we were working on this song.
I don't know. For me, the ironic cover genre is incredibly tired. I've never been into it. And, like this isn't... I don't know. I can't wrap my head around like how annoying this genre of music is, the ironic cover thing. Sorry, Steve.
Oh.
So I think I'm semi-pro ironic cover, but my rule is, I've done a few in my time, but my rule is just do the verse and the chorus and call it a day.
Right, yeah.
I think if they had cut it off there, I would have been like, that is amusing. And that would have been enough. But that certainly would have put it higher for me.
Like the Weird Al Polka is the ultimate cover song, in that it's like, it's a short, fast, ironic cover song that does the important parts and then moves on.
But also I think it's, the comedy comes from doing it in that context, which is like, this is silly, these songs in a polka context. I think with, like, doing an ironic cover in... Oh man, I keep losing the thought. It's like Jesus doesn't want me to talk about why this is bad.
I mean, like, just doing a different genre of ironic cover. I feel like
now I remember. The Pain CD, where they did that cover of What a Man.
Yeah.
And how it was terrible.
Yeah.
Ironic covers... Sorry, Victor. Sorry, Steve in advance. Are always done by musicians who aren't as good as the people they're ironically covering.
Oh.
I'm trying to think of some of the ones I've done. I'll admit I'm probably not as good as Paul McCartney.
9 Inch Nails. Where do you stand?
9 Inch Nails, I don't know if I know enough to know.
You dare call yourself better than Trent Reznor.
And I know I'm not as good as Oasis. I'm trying to think if I've done any others besides that. Johnny Cash, probably not. I might be as good as God damn it.
I think you're not only better than Oasis, but you're also better than the Beatles and also Jesus.
I mean, by the transitive property.
Are you just quoting Liam Gallagher?
Essentially.
See, the trick is this is Victor's romantic partner, and she's like, yeah, he doesn't hit me. He's better than John Lennon.
True.
You know what? It's hard to refute that. But here's the thing.
Hit me to sing about peace.
But Victor, you're better than John Lennon because you don't beat your woman, but you're not better than Paul McCartney, who also does not beat his woman.
Yeah, that's true.
You have a smaller ego than Paul McCartney.
I mean, if you were Paul McCartney, like, you'd have a pretty big ego if you're the most successful songwriter in human history. You'd be like, yeah, I did some cool shit. And I'm still having, like, pop singles that are hits.
The song that I ironically covered was Temporary Secretary.
Which is amazing.
And you did do a better job than Paul McCartney
I did it, well, and to get us back on track, I did it in the style of Korn.
Well, that's different because the comedy comes from just, like, doing an artist song in a different style. I don't necessarily consider that to be like the same ironic cover of saying like, oh, isn't the song kind of shitty? Which is, I think, what a lot of ironic covers do. And Temporary Secretary is a masterpiece, better than every song on this album.
That's for sure.
This just makes me really angry, I gotta say. As a huge George Michael and Wham fan.
Did you see Last Christmas?
No.
Do you want spoilers for that movie?
Yes.
Okay, so for those who don't want spoilers for Last Christmas, which, by the way, by the time this comes out, it's probably January, so fuck you. So spoilers for Last Christmas. Last Christmas is a movie starring that chick from Game of Thrones, and it's like a romantic comedy where she's fallen in love with this dude, but Emilia Clarke has lots of health problems, and all the songs are Wham and George Michael songs. And but there's a twist. Turns out that her romantic partner is actually dead. Because last Christmas, she received his heart in a transplant. Last Christmas, he gave her his heart.
My God.
The very next day, she gave it away.
The next day, she died and they donated the heart to someone else.
So it's not like this heart is cursed or anything.
Okay, so I gotta say,
I want to see this movie.
It's much more of a plot than the trailer led me to believe it had. So I was like, oh, look, it's just two people walking around. I guess that's the entire movie.
Oh, no. I guess, like, so apparently most of the movie is their courtship, and then, like, the last 45 minutes are the twist, and then just, like, reminding you how awesome Christmas as a holiday is. So
kick-ass.
So it's like Saving Christmas meets Ghost with a soundtrack by Wham.
Which, honestly, sounds kind of fun.
That makes it sound fucking awesome.
Yeah, but then over the credits, there's an ironic cover of Break Stuff by Limp Bizkit called Buy Stuff.
It sucks that George Michael died before he could cover Limp Bizkit.
My day keeps
he
going
had
this
plenty
way.
of time
I might
to do it.
buy some fucking gifts tonight.
Yeah, if I wasn't spending all my money on Frozen merchandise and, like, had some extra spending money, I'd go see Last Christmas also, but gotta do that Frozen 2 first.
I hope you know I pack some gift wrap. I'm gonna buy crap.
See, I can't see Last Christmas because I'm saving all my money to see Cats in theaters at least 7 times.
I mean, I'm so pumped for that.
It's gonna be awesome.
I was born ready for this movie. It is for me only.
So yeah, Faith, the best written song on the album. Maybe in the context of the album, not the best song on them, but I think we can all agree the best written song on this album.
For sure.
Yeah, probably.
What's a better written song than Faith? Like, which is an undeniable classic.
Indigo Flow.
Oh, right, according to Steve, Indigo Flow. Indigo Flow by Limp Bizkit is better than Faith by George Michael, according to Steve.
It's really more heartfelt in that he's actually addressing his real friends in Korn, rather than just some, hypothetical, vague romantic partner like any other love song themed around a holiday.
Steve, I love you. You are so full of shit. Next up on the list is Everything.
How did this song rank so high?
It has a minimal amount of Fred Durst.
Yeah.
Does it, though? Like, sure, by like density, it has less Fred Durst than everything else, but it's also 16 damn minutes long. It's got a lot of Fred Durst over those 16 minutes.
But the density is important. You get a long break from Fred Durst throughout this song. So this
also with a 16-minute runtime, this one is also very definitely influenced by Tool.
They're just like, we're gonna write a longer song than anything Tool's ever done.
See, as someone who doesn't listen to much Tool because I find them to be boring and not very catchy, but also listen to Genesis, so I'm a fucking hypocrite. This song sounds like the early Genesis albums that I don't listen to because they're boring and not very catchy. But it was on this album, which was still like leaps and bounds above everything else. So I'm like, hey, this is a bad Genesis song on this Limp Bizkit album. Therefore, one of the best songs on this Limp Bizkit album.
See, I was thinking this is a bad Fish song on a Limp Bizkit album.
Oh, do not insult Fish by comparing them.
I will insult Fish by comparing them to Limp Bizkit. Absolutely.
Fish is a much better band than Limp Bizkit. And you know I'm not into jam bands, but they're leaps and bounds better.
The only Fish worth listening to is the one spelled Ghoti and followed by Hook.
Got it.
Callbacks.
I'm sad that I'm
what
flying.
button did I hit? I meant this one.
I remember everything!
See Fish Hook, they were a Christian rock band in the 90s.
Right. What are my notes on this one? Oh, my gratefulness for a short song was not rewarded. The track answers the question of what it would be like if early Genesis was less good in every way, which is still better than most Limp Bizkit. Like, what if Phil Collins was, like, kind of a shitty drummer? The question was answered with this song.
So this song also has young fuckhead energy, but in the other direction where they're trying to do their chill song. And I will say I can relate to this song from a composition standpoint in that it's that part of the modern music writing process where you have like an 8-bar loop and then you just kind of set your digital audio workstation to loop that for a while and you just solo over it for like an hour.
So the worst way to write a song.
Yes. But the most fun way to spend like a couple of minutes. So this is another situation where it's like, I'm sure this was fun for them.
Well, what I like about this song is that it sounds different from all the others. And I was so fucking tired of hearing everything else that this is a welcome reprieve.
Yeah, I mean, this track, it's... When you have intro and you have this track, like, and you don't know what's in the middle, you think that maybe Limp Bizkit has, like, layers of nuance and depth and artistry. And that there might be, like, something more beneath the surface. And I guess that's true to a degree with, you know, this track and Wes Borland's playing, which still, like, isn't great. Like, he's a good player, but he's not necessarily playing stuff that I'm super into. But the severe lack of Fred Durst threatening women makes this song a nice refreshing aftertaste. So, yeah, one of the top 3 for the album, according to this ranking. It's up for Steve. You put this at the bottom.
Yeah, no, I did not enjoy it. I didn't even get through it the second time.
It's no Mary Star of the Sea.
I mean, I would compare it to Pistachio Medley. At least, except the Pistachio Medley, like, changes every once in a while.
I would, I don't know, it's probably... I think it's somewhere in between the two, if I'm being, like, completely honest and not saying that to troll you. Somewhere in between the two. Mary Star of the Sea is better.
Well, that's good to hear.
That means
but it does break the pistachio barrier for you?
Mary Star of the Sea?
No, everything.
Oh, no. No, I'd rather listen to Pistachio Medley because, like, this is 16 minutes of something okay, which is leaps and bounds better than most of the album. But Pistachio Medley, at least, like, there's some parts that, like, that was really cool. There's nothing in this track that's really cool. It's just like, oh, at least it isn't just as bad as what I was just listening to. Oh, speaking of bad bands, you were just on the Mushroomhead Wikipedia page.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a reference I make later that I can't remember the name of the band. I should have looked this up earlier, but I didn't.
Well, we'll give you some time while we comment on the number 2 song in our ranking.
See, that's the one that it's about.
We'll just frantically search for it. We'll talk in the meantime. Next up on the list, we have Stalemate.
Which one is this?
I like that the number 2 song in the ranking, we're just like, what did that sound like again?
That's the one that goes brr, brr, ping, brr, brr, ping.
All right, the catchy one.
See, that's the references. I'm trying to remember which band did that. Like the other new metal band that dressed up in a bunch of face paint and, looked like clowns.
Insane Clown Posse?
No, they
Slipknot?
were a new metal band, not Slipknot. Slipknot wore masks.
Oh.
They're kind of a meme of you, like they have the one music video they shot in front of a white background, and it starts off with the bass line doing the brr, brr, ping, brr, brr, ping.
All right, well, you keep looking that up. Why don't you like Google like a description of that? Maybe you'll find
the description. Brr, brr, tank. It's really hard to Google.
No, the white background thing, new metal.
It's a music video set it against a white background. There's a lot of those.
All right, but if you get more specific, like dress like clowns, I don't know.
You're not narrowing it down.
All right. So
are you talking about Eyes of Love by Lipstick Generation? Oh, dressed like clowns.
We're dressed like cool clowns, sir.
Got him.
All right, so Stalemate. Another my notes on this one. Another cool Katzen-esque riff to start off the song. As soon as the actual song starts, things begin to go downhill fast. I wonder if this instrumentation would be more appreciated if you had a Mike Patton-style frontman fronting this band. Some of the clean vocals are nice, but the vocal hooks are very lacking in this one. Wes is playing well in this track, but the rest of the band can't keep up with him. His creativity is limited by the lack of creativity from the other players. The change-up around the 4-minute mark is quite good. The drummer is actually playing something cool, but that is quickly ruined by Fred screaming. Not a fan. One of the stronger tracks instrumentally on the album.
Yeah, I like this one purely based on the fact that some parts of it sound cool. Again, much more than can be said for most of the other songs on this album.
I also kind of like the intro, and then in my notes I say I like the intro, and then when the song starts I start to hate it. But he does, like, this is one that's more explicitly trying to do a Korn thing as far as I can tell. And, so it gets points, I guess, for that. But I don't remember it.
Mudvayne, that's who it is.
Oh.
That Mudvayne music video, right? For Dig. Pretty sure.
Yeah, I totally remember that shitty music video.
I love Mudvayne so much.
That's an embarrassing looking band.
I mean, it's their first music video. Look, clearly they were inspired by, Limp Bizkit and their ilk. That was my weird observation with this song is listening to it the second time. I was like, the thing that grew on me with this album is there are so many of these, like, new metal bands like Mudvayne, etc., that, like, clearly had gotten a lot of influence from...
My God.
Shit.
Oh, did you guys pull it up?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah,
oh,
we
yes.
did.
So, here's the thing. As you're talking about bands being influenced by Limp Bizkit, like, there's diminishing returns. Like, when you take Limp Bizkit as, like, the bar you're setting for yourself musically, like, you're going to be worse than Limp Bizkit.
I mean, maybe you will.
But, like, I feel like I'm cheating in some ways when it's like, my favorite band is the Beatles. I want to try to hold them as a standard. So, when you're holding Limp Bizkit as your standard of what's good and your influence, like, I want to be like those guys when I grow up.
See, like, production-wise, I think there's a lot of cool stuff that happened in this genre. I think, nu metal did some interesting sonic things, and, Limp Bizkit, and as goofy as they were about it, like, a rap metal band with a DJ/sample guy, like, did push the envelope in some important ways. I don't know how much of that is them, how much of that is their producers, but I don't know. There's some things that they did for music that I do appreciate. My other comment on the song was the dynamics of Durst's voice are weird. He doesn't seem to be able to sing a very long distance, but he makes a lot of distinct noises. He's like the Bobby McFerrin of metal, if that wasn't already Mike Patton. That's right. Greg and I both independently jotted down a note that compared Fred Durst to Mike Patton in this song.
And that's why we're in a band together.
That's fair enough, because Fred Durst wants it all and he can't have it.
I see what you did there. Wait, I've got a references.
Man, this brings back a lot of memories.
Keep them to yourself, Pops.
So do we have any other comments on Stalemate before we move on, other than, like, some parts of it were okay?
I think that seems to be the general consensus around here.
Tank.
It's time you did some explaining.
I think we did. All right, so now we're at the number one song of the album. So let's go through the list from the bottom to the top. Clunk, Indigo Flow, Stinkfinger, Leech, Intro, Stuck, Sour, Nobody Loves Me, Pollution, Faith, Everything, Stalemate. But the least worst song on Limp Bizkit $3 bill, y'all, according to this panel of experts and Steve. We've got Counterfeit.
I like that as the one guy vaguely trying to defend this album, I'm the non-expert.
Right, because we all know it's terrible. You're the one that's wrong about this, Steve.
I don't know. You're the one who said that in your notes said that Counterfeit was trying to go for a funk vibe when it was clearly going for a shitty ska vibe.
Shitty ska is shitty funk. Because here's the thing, a ska band were like, guys, we're going to get a little bit funky on this one, and it's shitty white people funk. It's not actual funk. And they know it, and fuck them, and fuck white people funk. Someone go about this song first while I pull up my notes.
There were a lot of... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, this one at least borrows a lot structurally from, like, how Rage Against the Machine does their songs, where it's like he raps for a little bit, and then we introduce a second sound to, like, fill in some space during the verses, and then we jump into the chorus. And I think it's like, I mean, it's not Rage, but they gave it a shot. And it has young dumb fuck energy.
Yeah, I do have I actually mentioned Rage Against the Machine in my notes on this song, where I say the riffing in the latter half of the song has a Zeppelin and Rage Against the Machine vibe. The guitar tone all of a sudden becomes, like, much better, awkwardly, just on this track. So it's like, hey, you got good guitar tone all of a sudden. Why? But also,
Where
thank you.
did you find that?
This is the one song on this album where they do the Limp Bizkit thing, and it actually works.
Oh, with, like, the back and forth vocals with himself thing?
Just their general sound.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my notes on this one are well produced. The double vocals at different pitches is probably the strongest part of the Limp Bizkit sound when Fred is rapping clean at different pitches. The screaming is less appealing, but the dynamics during the verses allows for a melodic flow as it goes up and down in the pitch of his rapping.
So this comes back to my thesis statement about this entire album. This song is the one that is specifically about how angry they are at all the people who are trying to rip off their sound. But when they themselves rip off their own sound to talk about people ripping off their sound, they sound almost as good as the later people who ripped off their sound. That is the thesis of Limp Bizkit.
Oh, I do mention
Dow of Limp Bizkit, as it were.
Oh, I do mention white people funk in this song.
You did, because they have that B section where, like, suddenly the bass is doing a walking line and Wes is kind of doing an offbeat skanky thing, and there's like a reggae / ska organ going on.
I put the rhythm section I'm not particularly fond of, as it falls into white people funk category during the verses, but Limp Bizkit has a sound so far removed from funk at this point that it doesn't fill me with as much rage as the rest of the genre.
I mean, to be fair, I'm pretty sure, like, that's entirely a coincidence that it ends up sounding like that.
Yeah.
There was like, a rock organ sounds cool, and Wes Borland is kind of playing off beats and kind of has like a jagged, skanky tone.
Yeah,
and the bassist is just playing notes.
My next sentence immediately after that is it's such a train wreck that it comes off as more comical than annoying. So, the highest of praise I can offer for Limp Bizkit. And also, this one pretty decisively won the ranking. 44 points to win versus 37 points for the second place song. So this was a pretty clear victory. I'm the only person who didn't have it in the top 2.
Damn.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe just like deep in my senses, even though I wasn't like angry on a intellectual like thought processing level, maybe on a primal level I was angry about the white people funk thing and knocked at some points. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say this album's not very good.
Well, yeah, we're wrapping up into our final thoughts and
final thoughts on Young Dumb Fuck Energy presents Anima Part 2.
I do find it fascinating I wasn't able to find someone who liked this album to be on the episode. I asked a bunch of people.
I feel like you did end up with a panel of experts, though. Like, not everyone would have fished out that many Tool references. Thank you, Julia.
I'm here for you.
And also, like, look, we're all people who grew up with this album as a contemporary release. So, like, this is something that, like, was part of our formative years, unfortunately. Like, you people wonder why millennials are shitty and can't find jobs? Because we grew up listening to Limp Bizkit. That's why we're shitheads.
I don't know how to job hunt, but I do know how to break stuff.
Yes.
I know how to be violent towards women.
Yeah, like, man, Gen Xers and, freaking baby boomers were so good at that already.
We took it and we perfected it.
I don't know, baby boomers are really good about... Anyway,
They are really good. They're very good at it.
So, Victor, you said you were not a fan of the album. How'd you feel about the ranking? Did you even care?
I think I cared a little bit if Counterfeit was going to win. And other than that, I think I maybe made some surprise noises when my ranking was different from the actual ranking. But when it comes right down to it, I don't remember how a lot of these songs go.
So it's the reveal of the Limp Bizkit catalog.
Are you going to seriously, genuinely say that this album is like, it's like comparable to Reveal in any way?
No, Reveal is much better.
I feel like this album is a much less pleasant listen, but it's a much more interesting listen.
I disagree.
Like, this album grabs your attention and keeps slapping you in the face whether you want it to or not. Whereas Reveal, you can just kind of listen to it and have a good time.
I don't know. I think
you
Reveal...
don't have to pay attention.
I think Reveal actually has more interesting songs on it. Like, this is maybe interesting as a just like, oh, I don't listen to much new metal and I remember why after listening to this CD. So it's interesting in that slap in the face sense. But no, Reveal has much more interesting individual songs than this album. I guess I'll wrap into my thoughts of it. I really wanted to come away from this experience positive. There's so little positive to say about this album, and I feel terrible about that because, I don't want to diss an entire genre of music. I wanted to try to be open to it, but these lyrics are really problematic. These songs aren't catchy, and I know Wes Borland is a good player, and there's a couple moments on the album where he's playing like some very difficult and cool stuff, but most of it isn't difficult or cool. The rhythm section isn't great. Fred Durst isn't doing that interesting of things with his voice on the album. This is bad. This is bad. I didn't want it to be bad. I wanted to be positive. My goal going into this was being positive. This is the only album I've done for the Lifted panel where I would be embarrassed if a coworker saw me listening to it. And I would hide my phone and, like, cover it up. Like, and I will listen to, like, I'll be listening to Bad for Good with Studley, bare-chested angel Jim Steinman on the cover. Zero embarrassment. But, like, this just made me feel dirty and gross and embarrassed and ashamed. And if someone asked me, like, what are you listening to? Like, no, it's for scholarly purposes, I swear. I was just doing research.
Oh, dear.
So yeah, Julia, how did you feel about this ranking and, wrap-up thoughts?
I feel very good about this ranking. I think we have very fairly chosen the good songs out from the great songs. We sifted through this dumpster, and I think we've found
sifted through the dumpster
breakfast.
And pulled out the fire.
We found breakfast in this dumpster somewhere. It's a small breakfast. It won't feed you all day.
It'll probably make you sick, to be honest.
Yeah, probably.
It'll give you enough energy to get you to the next dumpster.
One thing I will say about Counterfeit is that it's really funny that they're getting mad at local bands for copying their sound when this entire album is copying other better band sounds.
It's true.
This album reminds me of Men Who Scare Me. And I think if I were to go see this performed live, I would think someone there was probably going to hurt me, but I might have some fun listening to the two songs that are less shitty than the rest of them.
I think that's the most savage takedown I've heard on this show.
I mean, again, Woodstock 98.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a healthy, positive band. Their shows are not safe spaces for women.
Which is funny because I've been to a lot of metal shows and I have never had a problem except for like once over many, many shows.
The trick with metal is you got to listen to metal that's not on. If metal gets played on mainstream radio, then like bad dudes are going to those shows. If it's all just happening in underground clubs, like that's a bunch of people who really care about the scene and it being a safe place.
No, that's absolute bullshit. As someone who's from Cleveland, fuck you, you are so wrong. You are so wrong. Fuck off with that, Steve.
Cleveland may be an exception, because Cleveland's an awful place regardless. Don't go to Cleveland.
Yes.
Don't go to Ohio.
When the tourist magnet says you gotta be tough as the tagline underneath the name of your city, why would you visit that city?
Go to a metal show in Fargo. They're super nice.
God, yes.
I suppose we still need my final thoughts.
Yeah, we need your final thoughts.
So, I was a little surprised with some of these rankings, like Indigo Flow, like surprised me a little bit. But honestly, none of this is hills that I want to die on. There's the distinct possibility that at some point this coming week, when I'm queuing up whatever dumb Kiss album Greg is having me listen to for next weekend's episode, I'll notice Limp Bizkit in my search history and be like, but how does Significant Other or Chocolate Starfish hold up? And I might listen to one of those out of morbid curiosity.
Well, you're lucky because we're not doing a Kiss episode next week. All we're doing is reviewing Frozen 2 next week. It's a nice, easy episode.
Oh,
I might bring
beautiful.
my phone and my earbuds along and listen to some Limp Bizkit during Frozen 2.
Oh, you didn't hear? Limp Bizkit is doing one of the pop covers.
Oh,
Do you want to build a snowman?
The dirtiest, grimiest snow.
Yellow snow!
Yeah, I was gonna say it'd all be yellow snow.
No, it wouldn't
jokes
all be
from
yellow.
him.
It'd be like the grimy, like gray, black snow you find in the streets.
This just shouldn't be allowed. And thankfully,
And
it
then
isn't.
when you're shoveling the snow, you find a used condom in there. Next to a bottle of Faygo.
Also, another note I want to make is that I was curious to see when Limp Bizkit's last album was released.
Like
It came.
2 years ago.
It was 2011. I highly recommend that everyone go look at the album cover because it is fucking butt ugly. It is the ugliest piece of trash I've ever seen.
I mean, they are. I've only remembered this album cover and that album cover, which is, I mean.
Oh no, sorry. Their next album is coming out soon.
Jesus.
Oh, we gotta do it.
God.
We gotta do it.
No thanks.
Hold
where
on.
they're going next.
The Gold Cobra album is just the Chocolate Starfish album with boobs.
It's just fucking ugly.
Yeah, yes, but it's the same album cover just with breasts on it now.
They upgraded.
Right? Like, it's like a pile of 3 weird-looking lumpy creatures, and then a pile of 3 weird-looking lumpy creatures with long hair and boobs.
Tell
me I'm wrong, Greg.
No, I mean, you're right. I can't think of anything good to say about this band right now. Even though I said good things earlier in the episode. Josh, what the fuck?
Oh my God. Hey, Fred Durst, fuck you. I got nothing to say.
I feel bad about this, especially I try to approach this as peers, less than because I've met so many great musicians and met so many musicians that I look up to, where at this point, I just view rock stars as guys who just have more success in the industry than I do. But I've met so many of them where I don't have that same disconnect and just look at them from afar. So I'm just trying to look at this if I ran into Fred Durst on the street, how would I approach him? And I would just probably do my best to not talk about his music.
How would you approach Fred Durst in the street? Well, you grip your keys between your fingers and you keep your other hand in your pocket on your can of pepper spray.
I was going to say you just keep rolling.
Come on!
Somewhere else.
Alright, so yeah, this is a bad album. Julia, where can we find you on the internet? What are you promoting?
I can be found anywhere on the internet at Lady Celery. I have Twitter, where you can find my Etsy probably more easily. But I do sell art. If you want to make not ugly album art, I can do that for you. I will not create 3 ugly women, but I will draw boobs. My Etsy is also Lady Celery. And it is like the vegetable.
Victor, where can we find you other than leeching off Julia?
Yeah.
I mean, she's got a real job, not making music.
I'm also a famous Hollywood actor, I forgot to say. You can see my back on Netflix sometimes. Thank you.
I can be found at the Victastic K on Twitter, and you can find my music on Bandcamp, Spotify, and Patreon under the name James Gameboy.
And Steve, where can people find our music that sounds nothing like Limp Bizkit, thank fucking God?
Yeah. They can find us at lipstickgeneration.com and under the name Lipstick Generation on most social media platforms that we may exist upon.
Jeez, this album was fucking terrible. That's our episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Lipstick Panel, hosted by Lipstick Generation. Lipstick Generation's music can be found on all major streaming platforms and at lipstickgeneration.com. If you're listening to the podcast on YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know your ranking of the subject in the comments down below. Feel free to leave us an episode suggestion also. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app, please leave a review and tell a friend about our show. Thanks and rock on!